Morning class, happy Monday, hope everyone had a good weekend. If you could refer to your Albion Online textbooks of section 3, page number 69, we'll be going over some builds today, so I hope you're nice and rested. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. So this is how the series is going to work. We're going to be taking a look at the more underrepresented equipment or weapons in Albion Online. Now this may be due to them being nerfed, or unpopular, or maybe they just straight up suck. Either way, we're going to be putting them under a series of tests just to deem how strong or weak they are in the current year of 2024. To end things off, we'll be putting the item under review and giving it a final grade. Now this grade will help determine if you might want to try out this item or weapon in one of your builds, or maybe if it's not worth your time at all. To help us better understand this, we'll be rating the items or weapons under these 4 categories: item potential, content value, current cost, and satisfactory. So if you know of any equipment or weapons that you think are underrepresented and you want to see it covered in the next video, let me know in the comments below. Or you can also join us in the Great Axe Club community Discord, which will also be linked down below. Professor Border, sir, will we be going over meta builds today? I've been really trying to get my infamy score up and corrupt the dungeons because I keep losing the bows and whatnot, and I'm looking for the best build in the game. And I think the only way to do that is to play meta builds and not enjoy myself anymore, sir. If you think that's a possibility that we might cover that today. Ow. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video. Sup guys, Border here, and welcome back to episode 3 of Project Discovery Builds. I'm super excited for this video because we are going to be shining some light on the underrated yet awesome Staff of Balance. So, without further ado, we're going to get right into it, but before we do, I'm going to invite you guys to join in on this week's giveaway. I'll be giving away 7 days of premium to one lucky winner. So, for a chance to win this prize, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment your in-game name, and I want to hear one item or 2 or 3 underrated items that you think need a little bit more representation in Albion Online. I'll be announcing the giveaway winner in the Great Axe Club community Discord 1 week from now, so stay tuned for that. Good luck everyone and have fun. But with that out of the way, let's jump into our first category, which is item potential. For those who don't know, the Staff of Balance can be used as a defensive tank or anti-heal style weapon, but it can also be used as a brawly style DPS weapon, offering a lot of AoE potential. So to highlight this, we'll be going over a few of the Staff of Balance abilities, starting with the second Q, Whirling Strikes. So this is going to provide us with a good source of AoE damage on a relatively short cooldown, which can be reduced even further if you're able to make contact with at least one enemy while using Whirling Strikes. Moving on to our W ability, we do have Gale Dance, which is going to provide us with more AoE damage to targets hit in front of us. This is also going to increase our movement speed and auto attack speed for 4 seconds. Which leads us into the juicy meat and potatoes of the staff, and that of course is the E ability, Mystic Rocks. This will conjure a cloud around you and all enemies within your radius will be slowed by 50%, and they'll also have their healing reduced by 35%, and of course your damage resistances will be increased while the ability is active. But do note that you will not receive healing while this ability is active as well, so just something to keep in mind. And before you say it, I know what you're thinking. Well, Border, the E ability doesn't deal any damage. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, right? Hold your horses there, bud. Just because the E ability doesn't provide damage itself doesn't mean it doesn't synergize super well with other abilities. Take this combo for example, we have our Mystic Rocks E ability being casted in combination with Electric Field from Stalker Jacket. So now everyone in our radius is being slowed, receiving a healing debuff, and AoE damage for every second they stand in our radius. Pretty cool, right? Still not good enough, huh? Well, how about this combo? We have our E Mystic Rocks in combination with Mist Cloud, which comes from the Mistwalker Jacket. This will allow our E effects to be fully active, but while in the protection of the Mist Cloud. This will provide us immunity to damage while the ability is active. And in case that wasn't enough, we have combo number 3, our E Mystic Rocks ability in combination with Ethereal Form, which comes from Fayscale Sandals. Our E ability, fully active, but this time we will be concealed in the powerful almighty Ethereal Form, granting us immunity to damage, and it will also increase our movement speed while the ability is active. Is your group struggling against enemy healers? Well, look no further. Combo 4 has you covered with our E Mystic Rocks ability in combination with Nasty Wounds, which comes from Hood of Tenacity. In combination, enemies within the radius will have their healing decreased by 85%. Have fun healing through that, Nature Staffs. And for the icing on the cake, we have my personal favorite combo, which is the E Mystic Rocks ability in combination with Sandstorm, and this comes from the Bridgewatch Cape. So, in combination of these two, enemies walking through your radius will be slowed by 90%, so they'll basically be walking at grandma speed, while the cape and the E ability is active. So to summarize the overall item potential of the Staff of Balance, I think it provides a respectable amount of AoE damage, as well as crowd control. In addition to that, I think the E ability is super strong, providing you, with a buff, a debuff, crowd control, allowing you to play a little bit more of that defensive tank style, allowing you to peel enemies off your backline potentially, or being a little bit more of a bully and just sitting on top of enemies and slowing them, reducing their healing received can also be very obnoxious and hard to deal with. Aside from that, I showed a little bit of the synergy between the E ability and other items and abilities in the game, as you saw. So with all that wrapped up into one, when it comes to the overall grading of the item potential and the Staff of Balance, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. I think it has a lot of potential, and I'm super excited to keep using it in Albion Online. And moving on to our second category, we do have content value. And to begin that category, we'll be looking at PvE and what the Staff of Balance has to offer. So when it comes to DPS, between the different variations of Q and W abilities, the Staff of Balance does offer a decent amount of AoE damage. So when it comes to solo dungeons, farming open world mobs, you can farm through PvE content fairly quickly. The only issue is, though, with the E ability, it itself does not offer any damage. It's more of it's a buff, it's a debuff, it's crowd control, so it's not going to help you clear through content any quicker. So when it comes to the E ability and Mystic Rocks, that's not to say that it doesn't provide any content value when it comes to PvE, as you do still receive that buff, the damage resistances, which is going to help you be a little bit more tanky. Not to mention the ability does last 15 seconds, which is quite a long time to have your damage resistances increased, so there's something there. While you also have the crowd control effect of the ability, which is slowing the enemies by 50%. I tested this, and you can actually slow and kite mobs a little bit with this crowd control effect, allowing you to kite them out and potentially wait out cooldowns or things of that nature. I did also test this against bosses, and it does work. You are able to slow bosses and kite them a little bit. This is obviously nothing game-breaking, but a little tip that you can use, whether while in your solo play or potential group play. But sadly, we can't forget that while our E ability is active, all our healing received is negated. We can't receive any healing. So unfortunately, that throws all our chances of being a PvE tank out the window, so just something you should know in case you're looking to get into the Staff of Balance. Moving on to PvP, I am pleased to inform you that the Staff of Balance is definitely more viable when it comes to overall PvP, more commonly used at a ZVZ to large scale level fight. It has shifted and fallen out of the meta slightly in comparison to the Grail Seeker staff, I believe. But the Staff of Balance is definitely still viable when it comes to PvP, and unfortunately I'm not in a ZVZ group, so I wasn't able to get you guys that kind of footage, but fortunately I was able to do some arena and all the way up to faction warfare to gain some footage to show you guys what it kind of offers in a PvP scenario. So when it came to Arena, I tried out a couple different builds, but primarily went with this one for the more DPS brawly bully style build, which is the Staff of Balance, Hood of Tenacity, Stalker Jacket, Royal Sandals, Limehurst Cape, which can definitely be switched out for a Martlock Cape as well, and I went with Resistance Potions and Beef Stew. So when using this build, the general goal was basically to sit on the enemy as much as possible with our E ability active. In addition to that, our Stalker Jacket, so we'd be slowing them, reducing their healing received, and dealing damage with our AoE from the Stalker Jacket. In addition to that, dealing as much AoE damage as possible between our Q and our W. Whenever I thought we could potentially score a kill or give the healer an even tougher time, I would activate our Nasty Wounds, which comes from our Hood of Tenacity, which is our D here. And you can see from a lot of these fights, we're just going to be applying an immense amount of pressure from damage and reducing the healing received, slowing, all that good stuff. Providing us with multiple wipes on the enemy team, and providing a pretty good overall team fight. And moving on to our second build, we did switch it up a little bit to go for a more tanky variation of the build. Similar, but we did switch to the Duskweaver Armor, the Faceskill Sandals, and we did indeed make the switch to the Martlock Cape. So the next clips here you'll see are from my faction warfare sessions. Unfortunately, like I said before, I'm not a part of any ZVZ group, so I wasn't able to get that kind of footage. But regardless, I tried in these sessions to use the Staff of Balance like I would if I was in a ZVZ group. just to mimic that kind of playstyle. So you'll see in a lot of these fights, I use my E ability to kind of stand on the enemies to slow them by that 50% for the crowd control slow. While I'm doing that, sometimes I'll activate my Phase Scale Sandals, the ethereal form, to become immune to damage, but still have that E ability active, slowing the enemies and reducing their healing received. So I kind of just do that to play a little bit of that defensive tank, kind of slow the enemies down a little bit, and try to not let the enemies get such a good engage on my teammates. One quick thing to point out in these clips is that we actually don't have the appropriate W ability unlocked quite yet, as I don't have my staffs leveled all the way up to 100. I know some of you staff mains might be shaking your head at that, but obviously in this situation, as we are playing the defensive tank, we want our W ability to be a little bit more utility, crowd control oriented. I believe the separator ability is usually pretty good. You staff mains out there in the comment section can correct me on this, but just something to keep your eye out on. So to summarize the overall content value of the Staff of Balance, when it comes to PvE, unfortunately it does fall a little bit short. Obviously, it does provide a decent amount of AoE damage, like I said, so you will be able to grind through, you know, like solo dungeons or open world mobs to a decent extent, but obviously with your E ability not providing any damage or any real effective utility to the spell, you're really quite limited. So when it comes to PvE, it is a little bit unfortunate. But shifting to PvP, I think it does provide quite the effective defensive tank. Obviously, that E ability providing all those great effects, really being able to slow down the enemy team and provide a little bit of a counter engage, not to mention that anti-heal part of the ability, super strong. So overall, I think PvP, it definitely has its place. So when it comes to the overall rating of content value, I'm going to put it right smack dab in the middle at a 3 out of 5, a respectable 3 out of 5. And moving over to our third category, we do have current cost. So for this part of the video, I like to review the current cost of the item in the marketplace in comparison to a little bit more of a popular or meta choice. So the first thing you should know about the Staff of Balance is that it is an artifact-based weapon. With that being said, I like to point this out because artifact-based items or weapons are a little bit higher in value because they do require the artifact to craft versus an item that just requires raw materials. So with that out of the way, let's now jump into the marketplace and review some of the prices for the Staff of Balance at the recording of this video at different tiers. I like to start at tier 4.1 as it is a very common tier to play at for more budget players or beginner players just getting into Albion Online. So for the first one, 4.1 Staff of Balance, we are looking at 20k silver. To pick up a Staff Balance. Honestly, I think this is pretty cheap. 20k silver, you can earn this pretty fast, even as a newer player, so at tier 4.1, I'd say this is very affordable. Now let's draw our first comparison to the Staff of Balance, which is the Grail Seeker. So now this is more of a popular meta pick when it comes to staffs, and as you can see at 4.1, it actually costs around 40k silver, which is actually double the price of the Staff of Balance. Mind you, the Grail Seeker is an Avalonian based weapon, so it's always bound to be a little bit more expensive, but still, so far the Staff of Balance is taking the cake when it comes to price at 4.1. And jumping back over to the Staff of Balance, I like to review around tier 6 as I believe this gives you enough item power to clear through more of the mid-game content. So at first glance, I believe the silver cost for tier 6 is looking around 76 to 77k silver. Honestly, not super cheap, not super expensive either. I think for tier 6 this might be around somewhat of an average, maybe a little bit higher, but it is indeed an artifact weapon, so something to keep in mind in case you're looking to get into this type of content at tier 6. And jumping back over to the comparison, which is the Grail Seeker at tier 6. As you can see, it's costing about 129, basically 130k. Still a little bit more expensive on this one, but overall not too bad. And jumping back over to the Staff of Balance, I like to review the current cost at tier 8 for that more endgame content. I did look through all the marketplaces and wasn't able to find any flat 8 Staffs of Balance, so I had to go with 7.1 for this comparison, but as you can see, it costs around 400k. Honestly, this is fairly cheap in terms of 7.1 or tier 8, if you will. I think a lot more tier 8 weapons lean more towards like 1 million silver, maybe a little bit less, so 400k at this tier I think is pretty well priced. And drawing our last comparison with the Grail Seeker at tier 8, you can see it is a little bit over 1 million silver on the marketplace at the time of this video, so a little bit over double what the Staff Balance is. So although it is the meta pick, you are looking at spending a little bit more silver when it comes to the Grail Seeker versus the Staff of Balance. So to summarize the overall current cost of the Staff of Balance, I think it's in a pretty good spot in the marketplace. I think it's pretty affordable, you know, starting off at tier 4.1, averaging around 20k silver to get yourself started. I think that's a pretty low barrier to entry even for new players, so I think it's pretty affordable at those lower tiers. Jumping over to tier 6, you know, averaging around 77k silver, I think that's about average, at least for an artifact weapon. I don't think that's anything too crazy, so overall not too expensive at the higher tiers. And then jumping over to 7.1 or tier 8, 400k, honestly, like I said before, pretty cheap when it comes to a tier 8 weapon, pretty affordable in comparison to others, so not too shabby. So when it comes to the overall current cost of the Staff of Balance, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. And the fourth and final category, which is Satisfactory. Is the weapon fun? Is it satisfying to play? And for me personally, I think it is heck yeah, super satisfying to play. I love the animation of the E. Mystic Rocks makes you feel like you're the Avatar, the last airbender or something like that. I love the effectiveness of the E, that's slow on enemies within the radius, slowing them by 50%, makes it feel super impactful, like you're really grinding down the enemy team or group to a halt. Not to mention reducing their healing received by 35%, super strong. As covered before in the video in item potential, I love how this E synergizes with other abilities, whether if it's our armor piece or the boots or a cape. Lots of synergy, a lot of potential there, which is super cool. Overall PvP, that defensive tank, super fun playstyle, definitely a lot different than offensive, which I'm not really used to, but I had a lot of fun using this as a defensive tank. The only downside, I think there's a lot to be sought after in terms of PvE, a lot lacking there, but despite that, I think it has a lot of potential, and overall, I think the Staff of Balance is pretty true to its name. It's not overly strong, it's not overly weak, it's just balance. There you go, the Staff of Balance. So with that, for the overall Satisfactory, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. And with that, there's nothing left to do but reveal the final grade of the Staff of Balance, which is a C. Out of the 3 episodes from this Project Discovery build series, a C for a final grade is the highest grade we've given out of any item or weapon so far. Honestly, I think it's a very well-deserved Staff of Balance. I think it's in a really good spot. I know it's not quite a meta pick, but I do still think it is very viable, and it's a heck of a lot of fun to use. So, Staff of Balance, definitely recommend it to you guys. Give it a chance. But guys, that concludes episode 3 of Project Discovery Builds. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below, did you like the video? Do you want me to keep going on with the series? Are there more items or weapons that are a little bit underrepresented that you want to see in the next video? Either way, let me know. But aside from that, I'm going to take these things off because I do not wear glasses. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching. Sign up for the giveaway for those 7 days of premium. Best of luck, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you next time. Peace.